Ladies and gentlemen, I am sick and tired of this. If you are an E4 player, you need to hear this. The Sicilian defense is every E4 player's worst nightmare. In my opinion, what I'm trying to say is that there is no defense on the planet that is more difficult for an E4 player than the Sicilian defense is. Take for instance, a Sicilian expert will always be more prepared than the E4 player. And this is why most people tend to give up on E4 every time. Therefore, I'm here to give you some hope, some fresh ideas to try out against the Sicilian. You will love this, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more wonderful videos such as the one you're about to watch. Anyway, so you begin with E4 and black plays pawn to C5. So our main goal, ladies and gentlemen, is to play pawn to C4, but not this time. We don't want to play the main Maroczy bind. Remember, in the main Maroczy bind, you maintain your D pawn, which is this one. So this looks like this, where you have 3 pawns on the center like this. So this is not what I'm here to recommend in this video, but it's going to have a similar structure. Therefore, in our simple repertoire, write that down. You want to trade off your D pawn first before playing pawn to C4. That is very important. Anyways, you go knight F3 as if you are normal. So there are 3 common responses that we're going to cover in this short video, beginning with knight to C6, followed by D6, then pawn to E6, which most Sicilian players play, by the way. So let's start with knight C6. Remember, you want to play pawn to C4, but before doing this, what do? You first of all trade off your D pawn, and this is when you want to go pawn to C4. Guys, this is so much fun, and you are going to love this. You are going to subscribe to my channel because of this. As you can see on the board, this is how complicated the Sicilian defense can be. Black has so many things to play even in this position, so you have to be very careful. They play pawn to G6, but against each one of these, you are going to be playing the same things, whether they like it or not, just by simply putting your pawn on C4. For example, if pawn to G6, you simply go C4, and now you can see what I was talking about. So we are controlling the D5 square with 2 of our central pawns, the C pawn and the E pawn. The difference between these and the Staunton-Cochrane, which I presented in the video that has popped up in the card above, is the absence of the D pawn, just like I said, and you're going to see how that works. Of course, you can't play bishop D3 right now because you're going to lose your knight. So you first of all need to play bishop E3. Then if bishop G7, you can even develop your other knight and maybe put your bishop on E2 instead of D3. I mean, just depending on what black is doing, but this is the simplest out of all. Anyways, let's look at something else. Again, after knight takes D4, if knight to F6 is played, attacking the E4 pawn, since you want to play pawn to C4 in the near future, you don't want to play knight C3 to defend, because that would just block your C pawn. The way you defend your E4 pawn is by going pawn to F3, and you are good. F3 also announces pawn to G4 and pawn to H4 in the near future. Of course, the idea will be castle long. If they play the top played move pawn to E5, harassing your knight, you just go knight B5, wanting to go knight D6 check. Next, if D6 is played, this is when you go pawn to C4 and all your problems are over. If pawn to A6, you just retreat your knight back to C3 and give it a chance. You want to plant this knight on D5 forever and ever. Oh man. Anyways, bishop E7, bishop E3, castle short, bishop E2, bishop E6, then castle short. Knight D7 may be played, you just go knight D5. I mean, where are your weaknesses? Is this the Sicilian defense that you guys were afraid of all this time? Look at how supportive our 2 central pawns are, the C4 pawn and the E4 pawn. These are very beautiful pawns. Let's say pawn to F5. F5 seems to be a long-term positional mistake because it opens up some important light squares for us. Anyways, whenever we see F5, we just take that pawn. We don't want to let it sit on F4. So just remember this. If they take your pawn, now you go knight BC3 and you continue playing normal chess. Anything is playable. I mean, just continue playing as highlighted. Let's see what else black can do instead of playing pawn to F5 in this position. Let's say they go bishop takes D5 first. Well, this is the simplest. You just take back and knight B8 doesn't work because we have knight C3. I mean, they just undeveloped their pieces. If pawn to F5 comes, once again, we just take that. So whenever you see pawn to F5, just take it. You don't want to let black sit on F4. If rook takes F5, for example, we have all sorts of things that we can do. Queen b3 is coming. Our knight will sit on e4 and you're good in this position. That's all. Anyway, again, back to our main position of the Sicilian defense. Our simple repertoire after knight f3, knight c6, d4, cd, and knight takes d4. So far we have covered pawn to g6 and knight to f6. What if black plays pawn to e5? Immediately, well, whenever you see this, the idea is to go knight b5. Why knight b5? You just want to give a check on d6, which is why they always play pawn to d6, by the way. And again, you don't ever want to play knight c3 in most of these lines. Remember our strategy, you guys, to put our pawn on c4 before playing knight c3. If you want to be a good chess player, you need to be playing with a strategy. This works like magic, so just go pawn to c4. If a6, you always have knight 5 c3. If bishop e7, you have knight 1 c3. If this comes, you can just drop your knight there. And if pawn to f5, what did I say about this? You just get rid of that pawn. You don't want black to advance. If they take back with their light squad bishop, you have knight d5 first of all. But even better is bishop d3 because you want to neutralize this attack. You want to keep it simple. If they take, you take back. If queen d7, bishop takes f5 is okay, but that would just activate black's powerful piece again, the queen. So you just simply go knight d5. If bishop d8, stopping knight b6, you just castle shot. I mean, what else can you do in this world? And I don't believe in knight to f6 here, because I could just go ahead and simplify the game. Next, I want to go queen b3 and attack this pawn. I have more time to develop my rook. I can go this if I want. So black may play something else like pawn to e4. Again, I can just take. If they take back, I pin that bishop. If knight f6 again, I'll just take. If queen f5, I have pawn to f3, and on the next move, I'm just going to win back my piece. I don't believe in any of this, so I'm always ready to shame the devil. Anyways, let's look at something else that black can do against our simple repertoire. So in the knight c6 Sicilian, we've seen that g6, knight f6, and pawn to e5 doesn't work. Even pawn to e6, by the way, because we can still go knight b5, but our knight is not under attack, so maybe we have time to go pawn to c4. In this line, the immediate c4 may oversimplify the game and take us straight to the end game. So this may be good to end game lovers. If pawn to d5, we can just go ahead and simplify everything, for example, like this, and go straight into an end game. At the end of the day, black is going to remain with an isolated pawn, and their king is going to be on the center of the board, which will be easier for us to start attacking. But if we go back to move 5, where black plays pawn to e6, well, knight b5 is not much of a stretch, but can lead to a very maneuvering game with lots of quiet moves aimed at improving the position. Very maneuvering game, but you still have some chances to play. So it can be anyone's game where the best player has to win. Anyway, back on move 4, black can also play pawn to d6. By the way, we are still in the knight c6 line. This time you don't have knight b5, by the way. You're not going to be attacking anything on d6. So just go pawn to c4 again. Self-explanatory things. Knight to f6, knight c3, pawn to g6, bishop e2. Again, your bishop always sits on e2, and after bishop g7 you go bishop e3. You're just playing the same stuff. And I heard one wise man saying madness is doing the same thing over and over while expecting different results. Yep, and this is what we are doing, so we don't mind being crazy. Pawn to s6, maybe preparing to go pawn to b5. You have pawn to f3, bishop d7, queen d2. I mean, play this in a classical tournament, you guys, and you will remember me for this video. I'm not even joking. This is what masters play in real games. Look at these statistics in the masters database. This is what real masters in real games play in over the board games. So I'm just giving you real secrets that someone out there would only reveal to you in a chess course, which is why you have all the reasons to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. Let's go. Anyway, instead of pawn to d6, what if black plays queen b6? Well, this time you don't want to go pawn to c4 because black can just take your free knight. So use your mind, just go knight b3 and everything is solved. If knight to f6, attacking your pawn, again you don't want to go pawn to f3 because that will just weaken this diagonal. I mean, since black's queen is already on b6, so if you use your mind very well, this is when you can play knight c3, also controlling the d5 square. If pawn to e6, you have bishop d3, I mean, Next, you're just going to castle short. If DE, you can take with your bishop, but you just take with your knight. You want to trade. Simple strategy. You go bishop E3 once again. That's where your dark square bishop belongs. Remember, queen C7, you simplify the game. That is if you want. And go pawn to C3. The castle short, you go queen F3. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just playing chess. Yes, in this line, your Maroczy bind pawn structure didn't work, but by wanting to play that, you ended up having a great position, which you are seeing on the board right now. So go ahead and give it a try. Anyways, back to the Sicilian defense. Main position, E4, C5, and knight to F3. We just finished looking at some important lines to do with knight C6. Now, what if black plays pawn to D6? Again, the secret is not to resign, but to continue playing. So once again, you want to go pawn to D4. Remember, you first of all trade off your D pawn before playing pawn to C4. And whenever you see knight to F6, again, you don't want to defend your E5 pawn with knight C3 because that would only block your C pawn. You want your C pawn to sit on C4, remember, so you go pawn to F3. Again, if you see pawn to E5, knight B5 is not a blunder, but just go knight B3. You're not going to attack anything here. And if bishop E6, this is when you go pawn to C4, achieving your Maroczy bind structure. If bishop E7, now you go knight C3. So you want your C3 knight to be behind your C4 pawn. That's the only strategy you need to memorize, and just remember that your light squared bishop sits on E2 and your dark squared bishop sits on E3 most of the times. Anyways, once again, in the pawn to D6 line, after going D4, and then CD, knight takes, knight F6, F3, E5, and knight B3. We saw what happens if black plays bishop E6. That's when you go pawn to C4, but what if black plays an immediate pawn to D5, stopping you from going pawn to C4? Against this, just go bishop G5. If they take your E4 pawn, you are going to take their queen and make them lose their right to castle. So they are most likely going to play D4. This is when you can go pawn to C3, the minority attack. You still want to take the queen, for example, like this, and take back the pawn on C3. Next, you are going to castle long and also mess up black's pawn structure on the king side. So this was just to show you what to do against pawn to D6 in our Maroczy bind opening twin. Anyways, so let's look at the last line. After knight to F3, instead of knight C6 or pawn to D6, what if black plays pawn to E6? Another common line. Well, once again, you want to play pawn to C4. So how do you do this? You first of all get rid of your D4 pawn. I mean, we've been talking about this. If they play the top late move pawn to A6, this is when you go pawn to C4. Again, you are back to your same move order, which we talked about. If knight to F6, attacking your pawn, now this is when you can go knight C3. So if bishop B4, pinning your knight to the king, also wanting to take the free pawn on E4, you just go bishop D3. Let them double up your pawns along the C file, that is okay. If knight C6, you just go bishop E3. That's where your bishop belongs. Remember, if they double up your pawns, I mean, this is good. You have no weaknesses and there's no immediate way for black to take your C pawn without losing their B pawn. And there's even a little trap here where you can go pawn to E5. Once they go back, you just take on H7 with check and win the free queen on D8. So this is how effective this line is, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go back on move 4 and see what else black can do instead of playing pawn to A6. I mean, after you take back on D4 with your knight, they may also go pawn to D5. Whenever they play D5, just know that they are trying to avoid your Maroczy bind setup. However, after pawn to D5, in the pawn to E6 line, this is when you can go bishop B5 check. You make them block with their bishop, then you take on D5. That's just a free pawn, by the way, because if they take back, you take back with your knight. And this won't work because if you want, you can just take this pawn. I said it's free because if queen takes D5, you have knight C7 check. And on the next move, you're going to win this poor queen. But you don't really have to go this route. After e takes D5, you don't necessarily have to take. You can go queen E2 check if you want, provoking them to block with their queen so that you win the innocent rook on A8. All these traps are all possible because of our strategy. Remember what I talked about. If they block with their bishop, you go bishop F4, putting more pressure on the C7 square. If knight A6, you simply go bishop E5 or even castle short or knight C3, I don't know. But bishop E5 is more provoking because it attacks the undefended pawn on G7. If pawn to F6, you just retreat your bishop back and you Continue playing chess. You have no weaknesses here. You just have an active position ready to win given a chance. Ladies and gentlemen, for now, this is all for today. Let me know if you like our simple repertoire against the Sicilian defense. I made this study specifically for those who play classical games so that they can have a simple opening repertoire to play against the Sicilian defense. Hey you guys, if at all you enjoyed watching this video, let me know in the comment section, and do consider subscribing to my channel because that encourages me to keep on making more wonderful videos just like this one. Until next time, bye bye.